Hello everyone, this is Shannon from That's So Po, and today I'm doing week 16 of my 2023 reads. This week I read a couple of things for Trans Girl April, as well as finished a couple of things that I'd been working on for quite a while. Timestamps and content warnings are in the description box below. So first, for Trans Girl April, I actually finished a couple of books that were on my TBR, starting with Bad Girls by Camila Sosa Villada, translated from Spanish by Kit Maude. This is a book that I heard about from Freddie at Sluggish Reader, who I will link below, and I'm so glad that he talked about this because this was a really interesting book. Now, this book is interesting because it is a novel, but it is autofiction. I think when you read it, it feels very heavily like a memoir that has maybe some kind of magical realism elements added to it, but it feels very close to reality. It reminds me a lot, actually, of Fierce Femmes and Notorious Liars by Cheng Thom. So if you liked that book, I really recommend that you give this one a try as well. This is about sort of a coming of age story of a young trans woman who finds a group of other trans women sex workers that form a community together, and it's about kind of those experiences. It's very disjointed at times in that it's just one little memory here, another little memory there, but that's also part of why it feels so much like a memoir. And it does a little bit also of talking about her background growing up, but very little about that and a lot more about just these experiences and the other women in her friend group and kind of what they went through. It is very, it's very interesting, just all of these different experiences that she and the other women go through, and the way that that talks about society. I think maybe this is set in the 90s in Argentina, and sort of talks about the politics of the time, but talks about just what they were going through, the AIDS epidemic, and sort of what the sex work was like, and all these sorts of things. There's lots of joyous things that are happening for them, but also there's a lot of really heavy content in this. So I will put content warnings below. Definitely check those out. They are very much meant. This is actually a pretty graphic book, and that was hard for me, but I think that I have a little bit more tolerance for things that are graphic when it comes to nonfiction, especially when it comes to somebody's experiences. And so I was able to get through it, especially because I really enjoyed the writing. And it just has this sort of magical, surreal feel to it. So yeah, I thought this was really, really good, but also just a lot to handle, very heavy at times, and definitely pretty graphic. So I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Next, I read Bitter by Akwaeke Emezi, which is the prequel to Pet, which I had read before and absolutely loved. And this prequel follows Bitter, who is the mom of Jam, the main character from Pet. Back when Bitter was in high school, going to an arts high school, but the city, Lucille, that she lives in is sort of a very not nice place. There's a lot of injustice, and there are huge mass protests and kind of police brutality in response, and there's a lot going on, and Bitter just wants to make art. She doesn't want to get involved in all of that because it's terrifying, except that so many of the people that she cares about are involved in those protests, and so it's her trying to figure out what her part in the revolution is going to be. So I think that the ideas in this are really fantastic, excellent kind of political and social commentary, and ideas of how do you balance what your personal needs are and sort of what you want to do in the world. How do you balance activism? So like really great ideas in this, but and I knew that this might be the case, the kind of tone of the book was very, very different from Pet, and it didn't work out so well for me. So this is a very dramatic, at times very violent, and a very action-forward book. So Pet was kind of a very slow and gentle book, and this one is not. And that's just not so much my style. Especially there's a lot of violence, a lot of kind of injuries, some graphic execution scenes, all that sort of stuff. plus a lot of interpersonal drama and just sort of angst and things like that. So this was an intense book. I kept thinking that, okay, maybe we've reached the peak of all of that drama and it'll calm down now, and it just didn't. So even though I quite liked the ideas in this, I probably should have DNF'd this book because I wasn't really enjoying especially the last third of it. But if you're fine with action and violence and drama and things like that, which I know I'm just super sensitive to, I don't think you'll have an issue with it, and it has a lot of good ideas in it. But for me, this was 2.5 out of 5 stars. Then I read The Moth Keeper by Kay O'Neill, which is a middle grade fantasy graphic novel. I have really loved Kay O'Neill's other series, The Tea Dragon Society, and so I was really excited that they were coming out with a new book. This is a full-length graphic novel, actually. A lot of their other stuff has been much shorter, but it is a kind of a story of this teenager, Anya, who lives in a village that kind of comes out at night. There's other people who come out during the day, that sort of thing, but these people are active during the night, and they are the caretakers of these moths that pollinate a very magical plant that they get some very useful medicine from. And so there is a moth keeper, a person whose job it is to go out at night into these lonely deserts and take care of the moths. And Anya is an apprentice and learning how to do that, but also kind of struggling, not really feeling that comfortable with the loneliness that comes with that job. And so it's all about that kind of experience of figuring out what to do with your life. The artwork in this, as you would expect, is absolutely gorgeous. Kay O'Neill has the most beautiful drawing style. I love the colors. I love the way that the lines are, the beautiful scenery. It's just such fantastic art. But I think that the story in this one wasn't quite enough to fill up the length. So it felt like the arc of this story and the meat to it was more appropriate for something like the previous works that Kay O'Neill has done, the much shorter ones. And in this book, most of the space was taken up by artwork, and a lot of it is just gorgeous, and so that's quite enjoyable, but it is a little repetitive because you just get lots and lots and lots of desert scenes, which again, they're lovely, but it didn't really move the story forward, and it made the book feel very, very slow, even though it's just artwork, because you're just sitting around in the desert for a very long time. And maybe it's meant to, evoke that loneliness that Anya is feeling. But I just wanted a little bit more from the story development itself. So overall for me, this was a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Then I finished a few books that I'd been working on for quite a while, starting with The Best of World SF, Volume 2, edited by Lavie Tidhar. So this is a huge collection of science fiction stories from people from across the globe. A lot of these are translated as well. And I buddy read this with Becca at Read Becca, who I will link below. We had buddy read the first volume in this series as well earlier, but we buddy read this over the course of a couple of months, a very slow buddy read. We would just read like 2 stories a week and check in, and it was beautiful. I love that kind of slow buddy read. And buddy reading short stories is also just the best way to do short stories because it allows you time to kind of reflect and discuss and everything like that. So I'm very lucky that Becca, as well as many other friends of mine, buddy read short stories with me. I love it. So this short story collection is really cool because it showcases people from across the globe, and so many different backgrounds and ideas go into this. I love that so many of the stories are translated. There are some people in this collection that I'd read from before, like Neon Yang, but there's also like so many other authors that I'd never read anything from before. And when you read these collections, you kind of get an idea of like, oh, I want to read more by that author. What does this person have out? So it's always a great sampler. Not every story in this collection worked for me, which is very common with anthologies, but I still really enjoyed the process overall, so I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. Then I finished Fairy and Folk Tales of Ireland by W.B. Yeats, which is a collection of kind of oral fairy tales as well as written fairy tales and poems and all sorts of things that was kind of collected in Ireland by W.B. Yeats, who's very famous. And this is a collection that Sush and I picked up when we were in Ireland a few years ago, and we finally got around to reading it because our together reading schedule cleared up after we DNF'd the Wheel of Time. And so Sush read this out loud to me, and it was actually really fun. I think when you're looking at older collections of folklore and mythology and things like that, sometimes there's some iffy moral messages in the stories. But I thought that this was actually just really cool. The poetry was kind of interesting. And what was very, very fun was as we were reading this, we've also been reading a couple of other things where I've noticed some of the influences of these folk tales. So things like the Tiffany Aching series by Terry Pratchett, we're reading that and noticing like some of these things that we're reading in the old folk tales being present in there. So that has been actually really cool. And yeah, it was just a fun time reading. Obviously, not everything in this worked for us, but actually quite a lot did. So I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. And then lastly, I finished a nonfiction book, the Dialectical Behavior Therapy Skills Workbook by Matthew McKay, Jeffrey C. Wood, and Jeffrey Brantley. So this is a book that my therapist had recommended checking out, and it is fantastic. If you are at all interested in self-help or in sort of mindfulness-based therapy, I really, really recommend this. I actually love self-help books, but I think this is my favorite one that I've read to date. It really hits a lot of the things that I like, which is that it's very clear, very concise, very research-based, and also very, very practical. So this is basically just a collection of very short introductions to different ideas of how to handle processing difficult emotions, and especially if you're somebody who feels stressed out or anxious or sort of overwhelmed by your emotions, or you find that you keep doing things that like your logical brain is like, hey, maybe this isn't what we want to do, but you feel just emotionally compelled to. This has like all kinds of different activities to work on that. It focuses on things like distress tolerance, on meditation, on interpersonal skills, all these sorts of things. And it is filled with so many different exercises and worksheets and meditation exercises and all sorts of things. So it's very much a workbook, but it does include, information about all of those and explanations and citations for research and everything like that. So this was really fantastic. It took me a couple of months to get through, but I loved it. I thought it was so useful, and I have been wanting to like do meditation exercises for a long time, but I really struggle with a lot of the ones that are listening based, but these ones I was able to more just kind of figure out how I wanted to do them, and a lot of them were really easy to do. So yeah, I really, really recommend this book if you're at all interested in self-help. This is fantastic. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. Okay, so that is everything that I read this week. If you guys have read any of these, if you're interested, you want to chat with me about them, if you have any recommendations for me, or if you've been reading anything good this week, I'd love to hear from you. Just leave me a comment down below.